All right, you're listening to 101.5 KOCI LPFM, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. This is Emo on Emo's Rock and Roll Magic Show. And in case you just tuned in, we got some really exciting news today. We have the one, the only, the god of shock rock himself, Alice Cooper, in the house with us today. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you, Emo. I'm all yours for a while.
I'm so excited and so honored as well. How are you doing today? First of all, to kick it off.
Doing great. We're starting to get word now about being able to tour the end of summer. And everybody, I'm so not used to being at home.
I bet.
we're usually on the road 2/3 of the year. We had to cancel 180 cities.
Oh my gosh.
Last March. And so we're going to go back and, pick up all those cities.
Yeah, get revenge on COVID, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I already had my shots. I already had COVID. I already had everything.
Oh, you had? How was that? You had COVID?
Yeah, I had it for about a month. I didn't have any of the congestion or any of that stuff, but I was just exhausted, and I lost like 15 pounds, which was great. I wanted to lose 15 pounds, but I didn't want to lose it that drastically. It was not fun. It was not a fun diet.
No, yeah, it doesn't sound like it. Well, I'm glad that at least you got it over with. So that probably took a little bit of the worry.
I'm a walking antibody right now.
Well, I feel safe talking to you through however many miles are between us right now. I feel extra safe knowing all that. Well, yeah, I was going to say, I bet this year has been just so hard on you. It's been hard on me just not being able to go to shows.
Sure.
And I can't imagine what that's been like. As you said, you're on the road 2/3 of the year. You had to cancel your whole entire tour. Yeah. I was bummed. I was supposed to see you at the Hollywood Bowl last May.
That's right. Yeah.
So what have you been focusing your energies on this past year?
Every band I know is recording. You're going to get hit with a tidal wave of records next year. I mean, this year coming up, because every band I know, if you can't tour, then what do? You go in the studio, because you can do that, and we did Detroit Stories, which, debuted at number one, which was every 38 years, I try to get a number one album, My last one was 73.
Doing good.
But I mean, that was a surprise to us, but that was really good. And then I've been working on the next Alice album. I've been working on the Vampires album, Hollywood Vampires album. Yes. And so, I mean, it wasn't like there was nothing to do. There was lots of stuff to do. It just couldn't leave the house.
And I saw that you released a Lullaby album of all kid-friendly versions of your songs. What was that like, putting that together?
My granddaughter is 7 months old.
Aww.
And I walked in the other day, she's holding in their crib, she's holding a phone, and it's got the lullabies on there. And she's just like, just out. So it works, whatever it is.
She's falling asleep to Alice Cooper music.
We didn't have a lot to do with that. It was one of those things where people can license your songs.
Okay.
And then they can go ahead and do it. So we were as surprised as anybody else. Somebody said, "You have a lullaby album?" I went, "I do." I wish I could have known. I would have put Dead Babies on there. I would have put,
Well, I hope the future generation of babies and toddlers, that's what they grow up on, is this lullaby Alice Cooper version.
Well, here's the thing about it. We come from a generation where we were the next generation after the Beatles. So our songs were very melodic. Even the hard rock, and the really theatrical songs were all very musical. We got that from listening to the Beatles. So it was very easy to take a song, and turn it into a little lullaby, a little on a harpsichord or on a piano. And I listened to it and I went, "Oh, that sounds really pretty,"
I love that. I have a little 1.5-year-old nephew. I'm going to introduce him to that album.
Oh, they put him right to sleep. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Beatles, I know that your whole musical endeavors really took place after Beatlemania storm rolled into America, you formed a Beatles cover band.
Sure.
So can you tell me about what it was like with that band, the Earwigs, and was that your first time really playing music, or at least?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was painting a house. It was summertime, summer vacation. I'm 14 or 15 years old. I'm painting a house, and I always listen to the radio. And of course, on the radio then we listened to the Beach Boys, the Four Seasons, Motown, that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden I hear, she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I went, what is that? I never heard anything like that before. And then about an hour later, I heard, I want to hold your hand, and I'm going, what's this? Well, what are these songs? Because it really wasn't different from anything that was on the radio. And I hadn't heard about the Beatles. And nobody, all of a sudden these songs were just on us. And then I started finding out who the Beatles were. And I called two of my best friends that were both on the track and cross country team. And I said, we got to start a band. And so that summer we learned how to be a band. We found two guitar players. And the next thing you know, we're playing parties. We're playing, in the gymnasium of the high school and things like that. And then you progress after the Beatles, and you learn Rolling Stones, and then you learn, and then we finally latched really right onto the Yardbirds. That was our band. The Who and the Yardbirds were the two bands that probably influenced us most, and we became the Yardbirds band.
And then, so then you went from the Earwigs to the Spiders. Was it still the same members, or was there some transition period?
There was a couple transitions at that point with Spiders. Actually, the Spiders were the Spiders all the way through. And in fact, when you hear songs from Pretty's for You and Easy Action, those songs were basically written when we were the Spiders and the Nas. Well, that was the next name after that thing was the Nas. And then we found out Todd Rundgren had a band called the Nas. And that's where Alice Cooper came in. But all the songs on Easy Action and Pretty's for You with Frank Zappa was all songs written when we were the Nas. So the real first Alice Cooper album is actually Love It to Death.
I was going to ask, because your first two albums, they have a really psychedelic feel to them. And then Love It to Death comes around and it's just completely hard rock. How did you transition from that sound? Was it because Frank Zappa was producing you before?
No, by that time, Frank was not producing us. Well, Bob Ezrin came into the picture, and he said, it's funny when you hear when the Doors come on, it's the Doors, He says, when the Stones come on, it's the Stones. Certain bands, you just know who it is. He says, that's the one thing you guys don't have. You have a great stage show. You write great songs. He says, but you don't have a sound. You don't have that signature sound. And he was the one that basically we deconstructed everything and started from the ground up again. And then when you heard Love It to Death, you went, oh, that's Alice Cooper, because he really just, and I mean, he's produced 15 albums with me, maybe more than that. We're sort of like, he was really my George Martin. He did with me what George Martin did with the Beatles.
Wow. And like you said earlier, it's a really good point that you make, is that your music, it's hard rock, but it's very melodic too. It's not just, straight pounding in your face. It has that, but it's also melodic at the same time. You can dance to it, you can groove to it.
And here's the weird thing, if you think about the bands that are still here from that era, Aerosmith and Ozzy, and all of us were big Beatle fans. All of us learned how to write songs listening to the Beatles. If you listen to an Ozzy song, it's very melodic. Him and I have talked about that, and same with Aerosmith. We're all very, very melodic bands. And I think that's the difference. That's why you start hearing songs of ours 50 years from now. And the further you get away from the Beatles writing, the less musical it gets. I think that, what I'm hearing now on the radio, I'm going, where is that band that can really do a song? There's a band from Ireland called the Stripes, who are really good. They're a throwback to the 60s, and they're really good, but they're 18, 19 years old. And they sound like the Small Faces, Oh,
what are they called?
They're called the Stripes, Stryps. And I think they're from Ireland. Their first album, listen to their first album called Snapshot. You'll be surprised that these kids are 18 years old.
Okay, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And speaking of being so young, when you were with the Spiders, like you said, you started out in high school. And was it when you were still in high school that you were opening for the Yardbirds and the Hollies? And from what I've researched, Jimi Hendrix, what was that like, being so young and thrown into that world?
Well, first of all, that was amazing for us, because we would sit and watch Shindig and Hullabaloo and these, and we'd see a new band every week. And we go, how many bands are there in England? Because you had the Beatles, the Stones, and all of a sudden you saw the Searchers. And then here was Pretty Things. And then there was, And every week a new band would come out, the Kinks, and and so we were the house band in the biggest venue in Phoenix. It was called the VIP Club, and we were the headliners there.
Yeah.
So when a band came into town, those British bands, it was they didn't play arenas, they played clubs. They were on a club tour because they just didn't play arenas. So we opened for the Byrds, the Lovin' Spoonful, the Hollies, them. And then finally our guy says, hey, next week I've got the Yardbirds coming in. And we went, what? Uh-oh. Because we did all Yardbird songs. So we opened and we did all the Yardbird songs in front of the Yardbirds. And,
that's amazing.
And we were pretty good. They were all giving us thumbs up. Yeah. And then they got on stage and blew us off the stage because they were the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck,
Man, that's a Yardbirds fan's dream concert.
Oh,
Yardbird songs from the opening band and Yardbird songs from the Yardbirds.
It was, back in those days, it was so unique when you think about the fact that you were playing with bands. After that, we did the Whiskey to Go-Go. And we finally gotten the Whiskey. That was the biggest deal in the world because the Doors were the house band there, and we got into the Whiskey and I said, Alice Cooper and who's Led Zeppelin? Alice Cooper, Led Zeppelin at the Whiskey. And nobody had ever heard of either one of us. We were just local bands. And the very next night, it was Alice Cooper and some guy named Pink Floyd.
Who are they?
Exactly. Nobody knew who anybody was back then. We were all just bands trying to pay the rent,
What a fun time, though.
It really was. I mean, it was honestly, because Jimi Hendrix would walk in, Jim Morrison would walk in, and they were just guys. Hey,
casual
guys. It was shoulder to shoulder with those guys.
Wow. Well, things obviously really changed throughout the 70s when you not only were just releasing all these mega hits, but your concerts. I always tell people that you can't go through life and not go to an Alice Cooper concert because it is so much more than just a show. It's an experience. It's a theatrical experience.
And
you got the blood, you got the giant Frankenstein, you got the famous guillotine, of course. What inspired you to take your shows to that extra theatrical level?
Well, it was one of those things. We always had that. That was the thing. When we went to LA, we had this, it was in the DNA. I don't know where it came from, but when we went on stage, we didn't have money for theatrics at that time. And I would go backstage and find a mop, or find a bucket. A mop could be a girl, with the hair. A mop could be something you swing around. A mop could be something you ride on. So it was all improv, it was just like doing the show. But Alice had this improv thing going on, and it made everybody go, what was that? What was that? I never saw anybody do that. When we got money, then we could really sit down and go, okay, now let's make this thing into a spectacle. To me, rock needed a villain. We had all these Peter Pans and no Captain Hook, and I said, I'll gladly be Captain Hook. And when you do that, you get to wrap this show around that character. And it was, again, something nobody else had ever done. The Welcome to the Nightmare show was like it was a Broadway show, except it was hard rock.
And, speaking to you and from what you're kind of known as, you seem like a pretty nice guy behind the scenes. How do you transform into that evil villain guy? What's your secret?
It's, for one thing, is like I get to play this character. Okay. He's a character I created, and I created Alice to be my favorite rock star. But I can totally be very subjective with him because I'm not him. So I created him. And I went, okay, what would I want my favorite rock star to look like? Okay, he'd have the makeup on, and he'd have the long black hair, and he'd all be, kind of like really dark looking, But I also liked the idea that there was a certain amount of slapstick with Alice, that if he would create this, really arrogant, condescending character, very,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd let him slip on a banana peel, because I think that that's nothing funnier than this arrogant villain in an awkward position where he does something really stupid and has to recover in front of the audience, So that's really always been Alice. He's always been this very vaudevillian, dark character. But there was a sense of humor behind it, always a sense of humor behind it.
Yeah, the dark humor. I love it. Has anything ever gone wrong on stage, like guillotine accidentally almost cut your head off for real life?
Well, when you're doing as much stuff as we were doing up there, there's always the Spinal Tap moments.
Yeah.
There's always the moments. When I saw Spinal Tap, I went, okay, yep, that's happened. I got stuck in a pod one time. I got, all those things that happened.
I love that scene.
I know. And I went there and I went, yeah, I could see that happening. That's a perfect example, though, of being so cool and then not being able to make the thing work. And you rehearse it and you rehearse it and you rehearse it. And it works great in rehearsal, and you get in front of 10,000 people and it doesn't work. Then you have to play it for comedy. But I did almost get hung one time.
Ooh.
Yeah, we were doing the guillotine, the gallows. And what is it? It's a piano wire that runs down the rope. And you have a hook on the back of your, like a plate with a hook on it. So it's an inch shorter than the rope. So it stops you before your thing actually hits. And that snapped.
Oh my God.
The piano wire snapped and the rope caught me right here. And, you have a natural instinct to live. So my head back, and all it did was really burn me. It didn't have a chance to close up.
Yeah.
So it burned me, but I went straight through the thing, knocked me out.
Oh my gosh.
I woke up and I was just kind of, am I alive?
Did you finish the show?
And so the next night, the piano wire was about 14 times thicker.
Okay, so you kept doing it. You just
we
made it a little
kept doing it, but we knew, we didn't even think about that. You go, how many times have we done this hanging thing? Oh, about 150 times. We never thought, well, maybe the piano wire is getting old.
Yeah.
Those are things you don't think about.
Yeah. But you learn as time goes by. And
you
didn't die.
Learn the hard way.
Yeah. And speaking of just dying, I guess, I want to hear the story about when you met Elvis Presley and you accidentally almost murdered him.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even an accident. It was a thought. It was a possibility. I considered the consequences. He invited me up to meet him. I met him, and he says, "Hey, man, you're the kid with the snake, right? Yeah, that's cool, man. I dig that. You're from Detroit." Yeah. He said, "Well, then you know about guns, right?" And I went, "Well, I'm from Detroit." Yeah. Go in the kitchen. He opens the drawer, hands me a loaded 38. Now, I know it's loaded because I look at it and I start unloading it.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm going to show you how to take a gun out of somebody's hand," right? Because he was a karate guy. And I went, "Okay." So I immediately started unloading it, taking one out of the chamber and all that. And he goes, No, don't worry about that, man." He slapped it back in, and he's going to slap it out of my hand, like that. But for 1 second, the little devil on my shoulder said, "Shoot him." And I went, "What?" And the little angel on this side said, "Don't kill him, just injure him." It's the greatest story ever.
Even the angel.
Alice Cooper shoots Elvis. By that time, the gun's out of my hand and I'm on the floor, and everything like that. But there was that 1 second, and I ended up really, Elvis and I got to be, I really liked him a lot. He had no problem making fun of himself. I got something wrong with my lip, man. Yeah, I got something wrong with my lip, And so I really liked him. But at the end of it, I could see how, when I heard how he had died, if you take anybody, Michael Jackson, same thing, and Elvis, you put them in the biggest mansion on the planet, and so you can have anything you want. You can eat anything you want to eat, any drug, any girl, anything, but you can't leave the house. They're going to find a way to kill themselves.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to find a way, because our natural thing is to have freedom. And so you're either going to eat yourself to death, or drink yourself to death, or drug yourself to death, or somehow you're going to find a way to die, because it's just not natural to, and you have access to all the stuff that would normally kill you anyways, but in a longer period of time.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm glad.
they
Yeah.
had no freedom.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that at least you weren't the one
Well, at
to
that point, I never want to be this big. I
yeah.
never want to be as big as Elvis, because I'm not going to be anyways. But I never would want to be in that position where I couldn't go out to the movies and I couldn't go out to the mall or I couldn't
Hmm.
go to a concert. I mean, that's still one of those things where you go, okay, I'm going to sign a lot of autographs. I'm going to take a lot of pictures, but
Yeah.
I can go.
Yeah. Without. Do you find since you're a stage actor, wear a lot of makeup, can you kind of sort of get away with going out in public without being bombarded, or do
Well,
people
I
still
think
recognize
there's
you?
more pictures of me taken without the makeup than with makeup.
That's true.
I do a lot of social things, going on.
Hmm.
So people know, pretty much. Um, and yeah, I see. To me, I think when you leave the house, you belong to the public.
Hmm.
I am just the opposite of most these stars that do this. I think if somebody wants your autograph, I think that's a compliment.
Yeah.
If somebody wants a picture with you, that's a compliment. That's not something that should be a drudgery.
Hmm.
That's something we go, oh, cool. Because that person probably bought your albums. That person probably went to your
Yeah.
shows or went to a movie or something like that. And hey, without them, I wouldn't be anything.
Well, I'm glad that you appreciate your fans like that.
Yeah. Well, I just believe in it. I just believe that that's once you buy into, I'm going to be an international, I could go anywhere and they'll know who I am.
Hmm.
Then you better be ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Alice, I am so happy you joined us today. I know you got to get going in a couple minutes here. This was so much fun. And I can't wait for you to hit the road again and to see one of your crazy shows once again.
You need to come backstage and say hi. When we get,
I would love that.
I would love to see you backstage. And the show now is even more theatrical than it was then. So
I
the show
cannot
and the
wait.
band, my band is just the best touring band on the
I
planet.
I
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I will see you soon then. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Emo, and I'll thank you for letting me be on the show. It's
Of
great.
course. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye bye.
Bye.